From the earliest days of Christianity, men and women of all ages, cultures, backgrounds have responded to Jesus' invitation to leave everything behind and follow him. For example, think of Simon Peter and the other apostles who left behind their professions and their families. Think also of saints like Benedict, Francis, Dominic, Anthony, just to name a few, who preferred Jesus over all other earthly honors, riches, and pursuits. Even in our day, certain men and women, compelled by Jesus' invitation and their own radical desire to follow him, leave everything to dedicate their lives totally to Jesus. What do all these individuals have in common? Well, among other things, they all profess and live out the three evangelical counsels: poverty, chastity, and obedience. Poverty, giving away all their possessions; chastity, remaining unmarried for the sake of the kingdom of heaven; and obedience, submitting their will to that of a religious superior. These are three counsels, three ways of living that allow someone to consecrate his or her life completely to Jesus and to his evangelium, to his gospel. That's where the term evangelical counsel comes from. Nuns, sisters, brothers, monks, religious priests, all these individuals make solemn vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience as an expression of their complete dedication to Jesus and to his gospel. For these individuals, I'm sure that Jesus' words in today's gospel resonate very, very deeply with them. None of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions. Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Poverty, chastity, and obedience. But what about us? Unless there are any religious brothers and sisters hiding in the pews right now, none of you have taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So, what do Jesus' words mean for you? Do they apply to you? And aside from this question, maybe just to address a question that may be forming in the back of your minds, does it seem like maybe Jesus is asking just a little bit too much? I mean, hating your family, giving up all your possessions? Let's reflect on all of this, because the truth is Jesus' words mean a lot for you and for me. To put it simply, the evangelical counsels are not just for priests and nuns and canonized saints. They are for everyone. They are for you. In the Catechism, there's a paragraph that says, Christ proposes the evangelical counsels in all their great variety to every disciple. Notice that, every disciple. But also notice the phrase, in their great variety, right? So on the one hand, it is true that not everyone, not most people in fact, are called to give away all their possessions and forsake the beauty of marriage and relinquish control of their lives. But it's also true, on the other hand, that everyone, without exception, every baptized Christian is called to be a disciple. And being a disciple of Jesus is demanding. It's incredibly demanding. Maybe now is a good time just to quickly address those questions that may be forming in the back of your minds, right? First of all, does Jesus really mean to say that none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions? Is that really what Jesus is saying? Well, if we interpret this verse literally, then unless you have taken a vow of poverty, no, this is not quite what Jesus means. But he is getting at something important here. Jesus is articulating the need, in fact, the obligation for detachment from our possessions. And what's the distinction there? Well, I think St. Bede the Venerable describes it so well. He says, "It is the way of a few perfect men to leave all things, but it is the part of all the faithful to renounce all things." And what does it mean to renounce all things? It means to hold the things of the world as by them not to be held in the world. It basically means not letting our possessions, our riches, become a snare for us, an idol for us. And moreover, the Catechism unambiguously affirms that this precept, the precept of detachment from riches, is obligatory for entrance into the kingdom of heaven. So in that sense, yes, absolutely, Jesus' words do apply to all of us. And secondly, does Jesus really want us to hate our father and mother and spouse? Of course not, right? After all, this is the same Jesus who commands us to honor your father and mother in the fourth commandment. So what's going on? Well, Jesus is using very dramatic language to make a fundamental point. God must be loved above all others. And maybe that sounds simple to understand, but I promise you it's actually much more deep, profound, complicated than we think. There's a footnote in the Catholic Study Bible on today's gospel passage that explains how the disciples' family must take second place to the absolute dedication involved in following Jesus. Or in other words, Jesus number one, family number two, right? Still seems simple, but again, we're still not grasping the full reality here. The gap between the second place of our family and the first place of Jesus is infinitely greater than we might imagine. It's not like the difference between winning a gold medal and winning a silver medal. Rather, it's more like the difference between love and hate. That's how much more we must love God. And now maybe you can see what Jesus is trying to do with his words in today's gospel, right? I think it's becoming obvious that being a disciple of Jesus is demanding. It involves not giving up, but renouncing all our possessions. It involves loving God infinitely above all others. And it involves carrying the cross and following Jesus. It costs us something. It costs us everything. At this point in my homily, I feel obligated to preach a very hard truth. I say this to each of you, but also firstly to myself. Many people who call themselves Christians are not true disciples of Jesus. And why not? Because many of us Christians, and again I accuse myself first of all, many of us, many of you, are not willing to give Jesus everything, right? We're not willing to renounce all our possessions. We're not willing to love God above all others. We're not willing to accept the hardships that come our way. In our gospel today, Jesus preaches an even harder truth than what I just said. Through the analogy of the tower builder and the king waging war, Jesus says that if we are unwilling to dedicate our lives totally to him, then it's better if we don't even bother. Being a lukewarm disciple is worse than being no disciple at all. That's a lot to take in, isn't it? Where do we go from here? What happens next? Well, these words, both my own words and also Jesus' words in the gospel, they're not meant to discourage us or to condemn us, but rather to call us to something greater, to call us to conversion. Jesus wants your all. He wants your everything. He gave you his everything when he hung on the cross and poured out his life, his blood, so that you may have life. In return, in response to this wonderful gift of love, will you give Jesus your everything? Will you truly be his disciple? And maybe this is the critical question, the one we need to take home with us and ponder over the next few days. How exactly might you do this? How might you give Jesus your all?